We are halfway through our mega series, taking a look at every single competitor that's taking part in this year's World's Strongest Man. So you guys know the score. We're looking at their story so far, how we think they'll do on each of the events, and how we rate their overall chances in the competition. Today's athlete is Iceland's representative, Eythor Melsted.
Eythor Melsted is a former bodybuilder, and he first started competing internationally in Strongman in 2019. The first time we really noticed him was when he was invited to the 2020 World's Strongest Man, and he placed 4th in his group. Eythor was invited to the 2021 World's Ultimate Strongman Strength Island held in Bahrain, and there against a stacked lineup, he placed 9th out of 15, beating some huge names in the sport, such as Adam Bishop, Konstantin Janasha, Rob Kearney and Mikhail Shivlikov. Eythor came back to the 2021 World's Strongest Man, and there he qualified out of his group after beating Rob Oberst on the stone off. After that appearance, Eythor took some time out of the sport to repair a torn meniscus in his knee, but he came back later that same year to compete in the Magnus Ver Magnusson Classic held in Iceland, where he placed 2nd behind Maxime Boudreau. His latest competition was Europe's Strongest Man this year, where he placed 7th. So Eythor's still relatively new to international competition.
Yeah, Eythor has had 7 international shows, but he was the kind of number 2 to Hafthor Bjornsson for a good amount of time in Iceland. And obviously, most of us know how impressive Hafthor was. Since Hafthor's retired, he has kind of become the number 1 from Iceland, particularly on the international scene. He's the most regular athlete we're seeing compete, and he's a very solid performer. No events where he absolutely stands out, but if you look at his results, he's always pretty competitive. He's not winning competitions, but he's not right down the bottom either. He's a very solid competitor when you look at his numbers that he lifts, particularly on things like the log, very impressive. And he always surprises people. You kind of never think about Eythor, and then suddenly, like last year, he's in the stone off on at World's Strongest Man and beating Robert Oberst. So he is a capable athlete and a threat to anyone.
So with that said, should we take a look at the events?
Yeah, and one thing that's important, he was great in 2021. Doesn't mean it's different events every year at World's Strongest Man. So we look at event history, how their recent training has been going, and what I know personally about these athletes.
Event number 1 then, it's the loading race.
So loading is an event he's got decent history at. He was 2nd in the loading in his group to JF Caron in 2020. Very good performance at Strength Island in Bahrain, and he's a pretty fast athlete. He's not super quick. He's not like, maybe a Kevin Fairs who's just lightning.
Yeah.
But he moves well, and he needs a big performance on loading. This is going to be an event he'll want to start the competition. Absolutely, top 2, he needs those points.
So next, I know from stalking his Instagram that this is something he considers his weakness. It's the deadlift ladder.
And that's why he needs a good start. If you know you've got a weaker event coming up, you want to get some decent points on the board, because normally when you get points on the board, you get to go a little bit later in the kind of lineup, and you know what you're aiming for.
Not always with World's Strongest Man, though. They're tricky.
It didn't used to be.
Yeah, right,
so when I was competing, especially early on, they just, for TV, wanted to mess people around. Whereas now they tend to run it, particularly in the final.
Yes.
They will run it like a traditional strongman
Reverse
competition
order.
where you go in reverse order. But yeah, the likelihood is if you do well on that first event, you're going to go out later on the next event. So he wants to go out later so he can see the times that people have done. He may not be expecting to get a huge amount of the lifts on the deadlift ladder. I think if you look at Europe's Strongest Man recently, he only did 3 of the 5 implements. Now, there's a few athletes that only did 3. So if he can see their times, he can then take a calculated risk to decide whether he's going to go without straps on a couple of them, how quickly he's going to try and go through. Does he try and make sure he saves energy just for the heavier ones? You have that option when you go towards the end. So he needs to be in a good position just to try and pick up points on anyone that might make a mistake. If you're the first athlete out,
you've got to go balls out.
You've got to go balls out, and then you can make a mistake.
Yeah.
So sometimes having that ability to go later on it is a big advantage in competition.
Next, an old favourite returns is the car walk.
Yeah, car walk, absolutely awesome event at Worlds. Looking forward to seeing it. And this is one that's hard to predict with Eythor. We've never seen him on a car walk, and we have very little to go on in terms of results on a super yoke. I do remember watching him last year at the Magnus Fur Classic, where it was part of a medley. They had the yoke into the farmer's walk. The farmer's there was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the conditions that they did the yoke in, they were basically in snow. So no one was kind of going quick with it. So it's really hard to say what he's going to be like. I have a feeling this might be a slight weakness.
Okay.
Now, I hope he proves me wrong, and he's going to need to, because I think if he's going to have a chance of getting to the final, he's going to need big points here. But there are a lot of athletes that are very good at the yoke at World's Strongest Man. He's going to need to avoid some of those really big names, and he just needs to focus on a solid performance. I mean, I always kind of refer back to the yoke. I know it's a car walk, but they are similar events.
Yeah.
If you're good at yoke, there's a good chance you're going to be good at car walk.
And almost everyone's done a yoke. Not everyone's had the chance to do a car walk, have they?
Absolutely. I think it's vital that he puts in a good performance on this, as he does have an event that he may lose points on still to come.
I strongly suspect the next event isn't what you're referring to, because the next event is the log lift.
Not at all. His log lifting is very, very solid. He was actually second to his group in 2020 to Graham Hicks on the log. And he's got experience on the log that they're going to be using. Well, I'm guessing it's the log that they used back in 2020. He did 6 reps back then. He was second in his group. Hicksy is one of the absolute best log lifters in the world. Hicksy's not there this year. As long as he can avoid a few awesome log lifters, I expect good points from him on this event. He's hit 185 a number of times in competition, and that's solid numbers. And to be consistent is good as well. We talk about the consistency with some of the really big names. If he can perform well on this, pick up some big points, I think he has no option. He's really got to perform well on this event, because I do feel there's a couple of weaker events in this year's heats for him.
So the wrecking ball hold, then, presumably this is his weakness.
From what I've seen and kind of know of Eythor, his grip doesn't seem his strongest point. So in 2020, when they did the Farmers Walk for distance, he only went a few meters.
Yeah.
He's done Hercules hold in a Strongman Champions League competition before, and he was 13th out of 14 athletes. His history on these type of events isn't good, so he's going to have to make sure he's been working really hard on his grip. And I feel just the events this year don't suit him as much as maybe they did back in 2021.
So with all that being said, if he can get into second or third place, he's going to have to do the stone off.
And we know he can do stones. He's a decent stone lifter. He beat Robert Oberst, who is a good stone lifter himself. To beat Robert on a stone off, Robert has won stone offs before against the likes of Luke Stoltman. So he's more than capable of doing the stones. I really feel Eythor, if he's going to have a chance in getting to the final, needs to be in second place going into the stones. So first place qualifies automatically. Yeah. Second place has an advantage on the stones in that they go second on the stones. It's very confusing. So the third place athlete has to lift the stone over. The second place athlete just has to return it. So
it's a small advantage. It's
but when it comes down to like a 210 kilo stone, it's a big advantage. And last year at World's Strongest Man, every single one of the second place athletes qualified because they had that big advantage. And I've been talking about Atlas stones. There's a few guys that are exceptional, but everyone at World's Strongest Man is a decent stone lifter. Every high-level strongman can lift stones.
Well, they have to now, because they've put so much emphasis on the importance of being good at stones. Why can't we have like a yoke
we can go into details of that in a different video. But what I'm trying to say is every single World's Strongest Man competitor can lift Atlas stones.
Yeah.
The difference in terms of levels at that ability, you're talking small margins. So when you get someone like a Tom Stoltman in that level, who's just that much better, or Martins Lissis, or a Brian Shaw, or a Trey Mitchell, you want to really avoid those type of guys. Maxime Boudreau. I think as long as you can avoid those really, really good guys, head to head, a lot of guys can beat each other when it's at stones. So having that advantage of making sure all you have to do is match your opponent,
I guess.
Big advantage. It would be like in a deadlift competition where you're going for max, but the jumps are extremely big. So say you could pull a 400 kilo deadlift and your PB is 400 kilos, but the next jump is 420, and you will then match guys that pull 410.
Right.
It's
okay, yeah.
you know, you've got to be so much better to get those extra points, and that's where the stone off really favours whoever's in second place and gets to go second on the stones. Very confusing.
With all that said then, Lozzie, how do we think Eythor is going to do? You've talked about 1 or 2 strengths, but a couple of weaknesses as well.
I think Eythor's going to need a really good group. I really like Eythor. I think he did amazing to get to final last year. Personally, looking at these events, I don't think they're the best events for him.
No.
I think he's going to struggle, especially this year that we've got 6 guys in each group.
Yeah.
5 guys in each group, you've got that. You only need to be third. So,
to get into the stage, yeah, you've only got to beat 2
one
guys.
athlete gets injured, you know, a couple of good events, you're doing well. This time it's going to be harder for athletes. And I feel World's Strongest Man is so stacked this year. And if you don't have your best events in there, it's going to make it hard. So for me, unfortunately, and I hope he proves me wrong, I don't think he makes the final. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm inclined to agree as much as I hate to. No, I agree. Like, you know, the groups, they're gonna be tough. We know that from when we've tried to organise them ourselves. Even with the couple of changes that have been to the lineup since we did that, we know how tough these groups are gonna be.
The way I look at it, there's 4 obvious seeds.
Yeah.
And I think there's about 10 that you could really class as seeds.
Definitely.
Eythor's not in that group. So he's going to have 2 guys, you'd imagine, from a top 10 list.
Yeah. But that second layer, outside of that top 10, that's a really stacked layer as well, because that has
some
the likes
amazing
of
stone lifters.
Pablo Cordiaca and all that sort of, you know, those people, some amazing upcomers.
It's going to be really hard this year. I'm so excited for Worlds. I hope these videos are kind of getting you guys excited. Unfortunately, I personally don't think Eythor's going to make the final, but anything can happen in Strongman, and I love being proved wrong.
So let us know in the comments if you agree with Uncle Loz's analysis. His analysis, not mine.
Liz is saving her predictions.
Oh, well, you know. I want to see the groups.
I've not done predictions yet, by the way. I'm going to make that clear.
We need to see the groups, don't we? This is just based on
in my
events.
head, I've got, right, there's 10 guys. World's Strongest Man are going to put 2 of the best in each group. And then there's still so many great guys. But then suddenly we might have Lissis, Tom and Novikov in the same group.
Well, you would hope not, but still, I don't like to assume anything when it comes to Worlds.
I've seen World's Strongest Man with Brian Shaw and Zadrunas in the same group before.
Oh, they better not do anything like that. So obviously Zadrunas isn't there, but yeah, still. If you're watching this World's Strongest Man, you behave. Anyway, if you are enjoying this series, please don't forget to like this video and keep coming back, because we are only halfway. We've got 15 more of these to come.